I don't know why I said yes to the lake trip. Maybe I was tired of being alone, or maybe I just didn't want Ethan to stop inviting me. He and I had been friends since high school, the kind of friendship where one person talks a lot and the other mostly listens. I was the listener, always had been. Quiet, observant, the kind of guy who fades into the background of group photos. Ethan was the opposite. Loud, magnetic, the kind of guy who made you feel like you mattered just by standing next to him. So when he invited me to spend a week at his family's lake house, I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to go, but because I wasn't sure I'd belong there, in a space full of his people, his stories, his memories. But I packed a bag anyway. The lake house was beautiful, rustic, open, surrounded by trees that leaned in like they were listening. It smelled like cedar, grilled meat, and sunscreen. There were deer heads on the walls and old fishing poles propped in corners like forgotten instruments. I met Ethan's uncle Wade on the second day. He stepped onto the back porch while Ethan and I were playing cards, carrying a tackle box, and looking like he'd walked out of a hunting magazine. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a peppered beard and arms that looked like they belonged to someone who could chop wood with one swing. His skin was sun-worn, and his eyes were sharp, the kind that made you straighten up without realizing why. "Morning," he said simply, with a nod in my direction. "That's Wade," Ethan told me casually, like introducing a minor character. "He basically lives on the water." Wade glanced at my sneakers. "Ever been fishing?" he asked. I shook my head. "No, sir." He raised an eyebrow, then looked at Ethan. "What kind of friend are you? Kids never held a rod." Ethan laughed. "He's a city boy. You'd scare him off in 5 minutes." Wade's gaze landed back on me. "You scared?" I didn't answer right away. I wasn't sure what I was feeling. Intimidated? Sure. Curious? Definitely. But scared? Not exactly. "No," I said. He gave a single approving nod. "Then tomorrow, early. I'll show you how it's done. Just us." Ethan snorted. Good luck surviving his lectures. The man thinks teaching someone to cast is a sacred ritual. Wade ignored the jab, already heading back inside. "Meet me at the dock at 6. And that was it. No room for negotiation. Just a quiet command wrapped in a challenge. That night, I lay awake longer than usual. I could hear the hum of bugs outside the screen door, the creak of old wood settling. I kept thinking about Wade, about the way he moved like he belonged to the earth, the way he looked right through me like I wasn't as invisible as I thought. Fishing wasn't the kind of thing I normally said yes to, but there was something about the way he asked, like it wasn't really about fishing at all. The lake looked different in the early morning. Quieter. The kind of quiet that felt like it had weight to it. Thick, sacred, untouched. Mist hovered over the water like breath. The dock creaked under my steps as I walked toward it, nervous energy knotting in my stomach. Wade was already there, setting up gear like he'd been born doing it. A thermos of coffee sat beside him, steaming in the cool dawn air. He glanced up as I approached and gave a nod. Not a smile exactly, but something that felt like approval. "Right on time," he said. I nodded, trying not to look like I was shivering. Didn't want to miss the sacred ritual. He chuckled, a low sound that came from his chest. "Smart kid." We pushed off from the dock in a small metal boat that groaned with each shift of weight. Wade handled the oars with ease, like the lake was his second home. Maybe it was. Trees lined the shore like silent guards, and the only sounds were water lapping against the boat and birds just beginning to stir. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Wade said. I nodded. "Yeah. Peaceful." He glanced over at me. "Not used to quiet, are you?" "I guess not." I looked out over the water. "Back home it's always loud. Cars, sirens, people." "Noise doesn't mean life," he said. "Sometimes quiet is where you figure things out." I didn't respond to that. I wasn't sure how. When we stopped rowing, Wade handed me a rod and started walking me through the basics. I listened carefully, partly because I didn't want to embarrass myself, but mostly because there was something calming in his voice. Deep, steady, patient. "Here," he said, stepping behind me. "Let me show you." He reached around me to adjust my grip. His hands were rough but sure, one on my wrist, the other guiding my elbow. His chest brushed lightly against my back just for a moment, enough to make me freeze, unsure if I should step forward or stay exactly where I was. "Don't overthink it," he said close to my ear, his breath warm against my neck. "Just let the line move with you. Feel it." I tried to. I really did. But all I could feel was how close he was, how his hands lingered just a second longer than they needed to. When he finally stepped back, I exhaled. Didn't realize I'd been holding my breath. "You all right?" he asked, a flicker of something in his eyes. Amusement? Concern? I nodded quickly. "Yeah, just taking it all in." "Good," he said. "That's the point." We fished in comfortable silence for a while after that. I didn't catch anything, but Wade didn't seem to care. He asked me about school, about what I wanted to do after college. I gave the usual answers. I didn't know yet. Maybe something creative, maybe nothing at all. "Everyone's in such a damn rush," he said, "to be somebody, to do something. But you can't force it. Something's gotta find you." I looked at him then, really looked. He wasn't like Ethan, who filled space with noise and energy. Wade was quiet in a way that drew you in. He didn't say much, but when he did, it felt like it mattered. "Do you ever feel lost?" I asked before I could stop myself. He didn't flinch. "Sure, still do sometimes." That surprised me. He seemed so solid, so certain. "But lost isn't broken," he added. "It just means you're looking for the right place to land." I didn't say anything, but the words sat heavy in my chest, in a good way. Like maybe I wasn't as far behind as I thought. For the first time in a long while, I felt seen. Not because I said anything remarkable, but because Wade actually listened, and not just with his ears, with his whole presence, like I was worth paying attention to. And I wasn't sure why, but that mattered more than I expected. By mid-morning, the mist had burned off, and the sun was starting to settle on the water like a warm, watching eye. The stillness was deeper now. Even the birds had quieted, as if the lake had entered some kind of sacred hush. Wade reached into the cooler and pulled out 2 water bottles, handing me one before cracking his open and downing half of it in a few gulps. Then, without a word, he peeled off his shirt. It was a simple gesture, maybe even practical. The sun was already high and hot, but the way he did it, like he was used to being bare, like he had nothing to prove and nothing to hide, it did something to me. I glanced away, quickly, but not before catching a glimpse of his back. Tan, broad, a map of muscle and old scars, the kind of body that had lived a life. He wiped sweat from his neck with the hem of the shirt, then tossed it onto the bench behind him. "You always that stiff?" he asked suddenly, smirking. I blinked. "What?" He gestured to me with a lazy flick of his bottle. "You sit like someone's waiting to take your picture. Loosen up. The lake's not judging you." I tried to laugh, but it came out awkward. "Guess I'm just tense." "You don't say," he said with a wink. It was teasing, light-hearted on the surface, but there was something underneath it, like he wasn't just joking, like he was observing, seeing me more clearly than I was comfortable with. We let the silence return after that, but now it was different. Not peaceful, not restful. It buzzed. I could feel it in my skin. This low hum that grew louder every time Wade moved or shifted his weight. I tried not to look at him, but my eyes kept drifting. His jawline, sharp and dusted with stubble. The line of his collarbone. The small flecks of gray in his beard. He looked older than Ethan by at least 15 years, and yet he didn't feel old. He felt solid, grounded, like the earth, if the earth could look at you and know exactly what you were hiding. I cast my line again and watched the ripples fan out across the water. "You think too much," Wade said behind me. I turned, startled. "Is it that obvious? It's written all over your face." I tried to shrug it off. "I'm just figuring things out." He nodded like he understood. "That's all right. Just don't let thinking stop you from living. I looked at him then. Really looked. And he was already looking at me. For a second. Just a second. Our eyes held. Not the way people glance at each other. Not the way friends look while talking. This was deeper. He didn't look away. Neither did I. The boat rocked gently beneath us. The lake seemed to still. Then Wade leaned forward slightly, reaching past me. His fingers brushed my arm as he steadied himself. It wasn't much. A barely there touch, but it sent a current up my spine. My skin prickled where his knuckles had grazed me. "Sorry," he murmured, too low to carry across water. I nodded, not trusting my voice. The thing was, I couldn't tell what was happening. Was I imagining it? Reading too much into nothing? Or was there something in the way he looked at me? In the way he touched my arm when he didn't need to? Wade didn't look flustered. He didn't look like a man who'd just crossed a line. He looked calm. Like whatever had just happened wasn't a mistake. Like he knew I felt it too. But then he turned his gaze back to the water, as if nothing had passed between us. I sat there, heart racing, lips pressed together, afraid to move or speak. The silence had changed again. Now it felt thick, too full of things neither of us was saying. Maybe it was just the heat. Maybe I was imagining things. Or maybe Wade really did act different when Ethan wasn't around. And that thought, that possibility, scared me more than I wanted to admit. By late morning, the sun had settled into its throne in the sky, casting long golden reflections across the lake. Wade rowed us toward a shaded inlet where pine trees leaned over the shore like old protectors. The air smelled of sap and still water, and the boat gently bumped against the shallows. "Let's stretch our legs," he said. I followed him out of the boat and onto the bank. The pine needles cushioned our steps, the ground soft and cool underfoot. Wade dropped his water bottle into a patch of shade and sat against a low tree trunk with a quiet grunt. I sat nearby, not too close, but close enough to feel his presence. For a while, neither of us spoke. We just listened to the wind moving, through the trees, to the creaking of the boat rocking gently in the water behind us. Then, Wade broke the silence. "You know," he began, eyes fixed somewhere in the middle distance. "I wasn't always like this." I glanced at him. "Like what?" He shrugged. "Sure of myself. Comfortable in my skin." He let out a breath that felt heavy with years. "When I was younger, I was confused. About a lot of things. What I wanted. What I felt. Who I could say it to." His voice was low, steady. Not emotional, exactly. But not guarded either. "I thought I had to choose a version of myself that would make everyone else comfortable," he went on. "Tried that for a long time. I didn't speak. I didn't dare. Something told me this wasn't something he said to just anyone." He turned to look at me, and his eyes were softer than I'd ever seen them. "You remind me of how I used to feel," he said. "Like you're carrying a secret you haven't figured out how to name." I swallowed hard. My chest tightened. Was he saying what I thought he was saying? Or was he just offering understanding without asking questions? I couldn't tell. But I didn't want to ruin the moment by asking for more than he was ready to give. A breeze moved through the trees, and a few pine needles drifted down between us. One stuck to my cheek, and before I could react, Wade leaned over and brushed it. Away with the back of his fingers, his touch lingered. Not in a way that asked for anything, just in a way that said he wasn't afraid to touch me gently. Carefully. His hand dropped, but his gaze didn't. "Wade," I said, my voice barely more than a whisper. I wasn't even sure what I was about to say until the words left my mouth. I've never told anyone this before. Not even Ethan. He didn't move. Just waited. "I think I might be into guys." There it was. Out in the air. Raw and shivering. I expected something. Surprise, discomfort, a shift in posture. But Wade just nodded once, calm and certain. "Yeah," he said softly. I figured. The quiet that followed wasn't uncomfortable. If anything, it was the first real quiet I'd felt since the trip started. Not silence between strangers, but the stillness that comes when something finally clicks into place. I don't even know what to do with it, I admitted, looking down at my hands. Sometimes it feels real. Sometimes I convince myself I'm making it up, like I'm borrowing someone else's life. That's normal, he said, especially when you don't see yourself in the people around you, or when the people you do see don't talk about it. I looked up. Is that how it was for you? He nodded. I buried a lot of things, and by the time I figured myself out, I'd already built a life that didn't make space for it. There was something sad in the way he said that, but not bitter. Just honest. But that doesn't mean you have to do the same, he added. Felt something shift in my chest, like a knot loosening, like maybe I could breathe a little deeper. Wade reached for his water, took a sip, then set it down and leaned back against the tree. You don't have to rush to define it, he said. You just have to let yourself feel it. That's enough. I nodded, the back of my throat tight. I didn't know what this moment meant, what Wade meant by sharing it. But I knew I would. Remember it, not because something dramatic had happened, but because he saw me, really saw me, and didn't look away. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was carrying something shameful. I felt human. The sun was beginning its slow descent when Wade finally stood and stretched. His shadow fell long across the pine needles, and I realized how much time had passed without either of us noticing. Or maybe we had. We just didn't want to disturb it. Time to pack up, he said gently, and I nodded, though I wasn't ready for this day to end. We walked back to the boat in silence. The mood was different now, not awkward, not cold, just careful, like we were both carrying something fragile between us, and neither wanted to be the first to drop it. Wade handed me the fishing rods and started securing the tackle box, his movements smooth and practiced. I watched him for a moment, taking in the way his shoulders flexed, the way he moved with such quiet certainty. I can help, I offered. He smiled. Not wide, just a small tug at the corner of his mouth. And handed me the bag of gear. Here, just don't drop it overboard, I smirked, grateful for the normalcy, the lightness, but it didn't last. As we stepped back into the boat and pushed off from the shore, I could feel it again. That shift in the air, the unsaid thing between us, growing louder in the quiet. By the time we reached the dock, the sun was hanging low, turning the water amber and gold. Everything felt slower, like the lake itself didn't want to let go of the day. I stepped out first and reached for the gear, but Wade was already behind me, closer than I expected. His hands brushed mine as we grabbed the same bag. Neither of us let go immediately. I turned to say something, I'm still not sure what, and found him already looking at me. We stood there, face to face, just inches apart. The warmth of the day clung to our skin, but the heat between us felt different, sharper, more focused. My heart thudded against my ribs, loud in my chest. Wade's eyes searched mine, not hungrily, not desperately, just deeply, like he was trying to read a truth I hadn't quite written yet. He leaned in, just a little, enough that I stopped breathing, enough that I thought maybe, but then he stopped. His hand, still holding the strap of the bag, loosened. He exhaled slowly and stepped back, just enough to break the spell. You're not ready, he said softly. And that's okay. My chest tightened. I didn't know whether I was relieved or disappointed. Someday, you'll know exactly what you want, he continued, his voice low, almost like a confession. And when that day comes, don't let the world rush you into it, or out of it. It has to be yours, not anyone else's. I nodded, unable to speak. A lump had formed in my throat, and all I could do was hold his gaze and try to absorb what he was really saying. This was his way of saying goodbye, not just to the day, but to the possibility that had hovered between us. It wasn't rejection, it was protection, a quiet kind of care. Wade reached down and handed me my jacket, brushing my hand once more. But this time it was different, final, measured. I'll carry the rest, he said. You go ahead. Ethan's probably wondering if I made you dig your own bait or something. I tried to smile, but it barely reached my eyes. I stepped onto the gravel path that led back to the cabin. But before I disappeared around the bend, I looked back. He was standing on the dock, the lake behind him, the setting sun casting him in gold. He didn't wave. He didn't smile. He just stood there, like a moment I'd remember exactly as it was. Forever paused just before something could have happened, and maybe that was enough. When we got back to the cabin, Ethan was sitting on the deck barefoot, eating chips from a crumpled bag and scrolling through his phone. He looked up as we approached, grinning like he'd just woken up from a nap. "You two survive? Wade didn't drown you with his philosophical fishing wisdom?" I laughed, but it came out thin and airy. "Barely." Wade chuckled too, setting down the gear with ease, already back in uncle mode, casual, unreadable. Whatever had passed, between us out there on the lake, he wore it like a secret, one he wouldn't speak of again unless I did. "Kid did all right," he said to Ethan. "Didn't even drop the rod." Ethan smirked at me like I'd passed some impossible test. "Wow, that's impressive." I forced a smile, nodded, then mumbled something about needing a shower and slipped inside. The cabin was dim and cool, filled with the faint scent of pine wood and lake water. I stood under the spray of the shower longer than I needed to, letting the warmth soak into my skin like it could wash away the storm inside me. But it didn't. That night, long after the house had gone quiet and Ethan's breathing had settled into the rhythm of sleep across the room, I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan above me. My body was still. My mind wasn't. I replayed everything, the boat rocking gently under our feet, Wade's voice in the stillness, the weight of his hand brushing mine, his eyes when he told me I wasn't ready. He was right. I wasn't ready. Not for anything more than what had already passed between us, but something had changed, irrevocably. It wasn't just about Wade. It was about me, about seeing something in myself I'd always kept blurred, vague, half-formed, and about someone else seeing it too, and not running, not judging, not turning away. For the first time, I didn't feel broken or confused. I felt like I was becoming something, someone, slowly, quietly, the way the lake had warmed through the day without me noticing until the chill was gone. A shift had happened. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. I turned over in bed, the moonlight casting silver lines across the floorboards. Somewhere outside, a loon called across the water. The sound echoed softly, and I imagined Wade sitting alone on the dock, the way I'd last seen him. Still. Golden. Unreadable. I didn't know if he'd meant for things to unfold the way they did. Maybe he hadn't planned anything. Maybe it had just happened. Two people recognizing something familiar in each other. But I was grateful, not for what almost happened, but for what didn't. Because what he gave me wasn't a moment. It was a mirror. And for the first time in my life, I didn't look away. Dear Wade, I don't know if you'd even remember everything the way I do. Maybe that morning was just another quiet fishing trip for you. A way to get out on the water, breathe some clean air, escape the noise of the world for a while. But for me, it was more than that. I've started coming out. Slowly. Carefully. First to myself, then to a few people I trust. I still get scared sometimes, of how I'll be seen, of what it means, of the weight of it all. But I think that's okay. I think you were right. It's not about rushing. It's about learning to own the truth in my own time. I want to thank you, not just for taking me fishing, but for making space for me. Space I didn't even know I needed. You saw something I hadn't dared to say out loud, and instead of turning away or pushing forward, you just stood still. You held the silence like it mattered. Like I mattered. You didn't take advantage. You didn't make it about you. You just offered a kind of presence I'd never known before. I think about that morning more often than I'd admit out loud. The cool stillness of the lake. The way the world seemed to pause around us. The words we didn't say, and the ones we did. I don't know if I'll ever send this letter. Maybe it's not meant for your hands. Maybe it's just something I needed to write so I wouldn't forget how far I've come. But if you ever do read it, just know, You weren't just teaching me to cast, you helped me see myself.